Brothers and sisters, friends and foes, lend me your ears, your hearts, your very souls, for what I speak today is not mere words, but a fire that burns for justice, a thunder that roars for freedom. I am Malcolm X, not a shadow from history, but a living flame in every soul that dares to dream, dares to fight, dares to be free. I stand before you with a question that cuts like a blade, that sears like a brand. The ballot or the bullet, which will you choose? This ain't no game, no idle talk to pass the time. This is the cry of our ancestors, chained in body but never in spirit, who sang of liberty through blood and tears. This is the echo of Patrick Henry, who stood defiant and declared, "Give me liberty or give me death." This is the challenge I threw down in 1964 in a Detroit church when I told my people to seize their power through the ballot, or, if the system refused to bend, to rise with the bullet by any means necessary. And now, in this year of 2025, I ask you, young warriors, dreamers, thinkers, those the world tries to crush, what will you choose? The ballot, your voice to shake the foundations of this broken system. The bullet, your unyielding resistance when the doors of justice slam shut. Or, like me, will you wield both with the wisdom to know when to vote and when to fight? Let me take you back to my own journey so you understand the weight of this choice. I was born Malcolm Little in 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska, into a world that saw me as less than human before I could even speak. My father, Earl Little, a preacher and follower of Marcus Garvey's vision of black pride, was murdered by white supremacists when I was 6, run over by a streetcar in a killing they called an accident. Our home had been burned to the ground years before, a fiery warning to any black man who dared to stand tall. My mother, Louise, fought to keep us whole, but poverty and grief broke her spirit, and she was locked away in an asylum. Me and my siblings were scattered like ashes, torn apart by a system that cared nothing for our pain. By my teens, I was lost, wandering the streets of Boston and Harlem, chasing shadows of acceptance. A teacher told me my dream of being a lawyer was no realistic goal for a Negro. Those words hit like a bullet, not of steel, but of despair, piercing my young heart. I dropped out, became a hustler, a thief, a ghost of a man. By 20, I was in prison, caged for burglary, believing my life was over. But in that cold cell, something stirred. I found books, history, philosophy, religion. I read of my ancestors' strength, of systems built to crush us, of truths hidden in plain sight. I found the Nation of Islam preaching black pride and self-reliance. It was a spark that set my soul ablaze. I saw the lies I'd been fed, that I was nothing, that my people were nothing, that freedom was a gift I'd never touch. I cast off the name Little, a slave name, and became Malcolm X, reborn in truth. When I walked out of prison in 1952, I was no shadow. I became a minister, traveling from New York to Chicago, preaching self-reliance, black pride, and the power of our collective voice. I told my people to use the ballot, vote for leaders who'd serve us, hold politicians accountable. But I also said, if the ballot fails, if the system keeps you down, you must be ready to defend yourself by any means necessary. In 1964, I left the Nation of Islam, seeing its limits. I traveled to Mecca, where I prayed with Muslims of every race, shoulder to shoulder, equal. It changed me. I saw the fight wasn't just black against white. It was justice against injustice, truth against lies. That year in Detroit, I spoke of the ballot or the bullet, saying it's liberty or it's death, freedom for everybody or freedom for nobody. My life ended in 1965, cut down by assassins' bullets, but my words live on, and I ask you now, what will you choose? You might say, Brother Malcolm, that was your time. Things are different now. Are they? Look around. The chains may not be iron, but they're real. In 2025, voter suppression laws, gerrymandering, ID requirements, cuts to early voting, target black, brown, poor, and young folks trying to silence your voice. Over 400 bills were introduced in 2021 alone to limit voting rights, a calculated attack on your power. Economic inequality festers. The top 1% own more wealth than the bottom 90%, while you work 2 jobs just to eat. Systemic racism runs deep in housing, where redlining lingers, in schools, where black and brown kids get less, in prisons, where our brothers and sisters are locked away at shameful rates. Women earn less, face harassment, fight for their bodies' autonomy. LGBTQ plus folks battle for basic rights. People with disabilities navigate a world not built for them. And you, youth, dreamers, thinkers, are told your ideas are too wild, your dreams too big, your voice too small. These are the lies that bind you. They say your vote don't count because the system's rigged. They say resistance is futile because the powerful always win. They say you're not enough, not smart enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough. Worst of all, they plant self-doubt, making you question your own power, your own worth. But I'm here to tell you, those lies ain't your truth. Your vote is a weapon, sharper than any blade. In 2020, young voters turned out in record numbers, shaking the system. Your resistance is a fire, burning through oppression. Look at the millions who marched after George Floyd's murder, demanding justice. Your dreams ain't fantasies. They're blueprints for a new world. I said in '64, we're not anti-white. We're anti-exploitation, anti-degradation, anti-oppression. That's the fight against systems that rob your freedom, not people. The ballot is your first move. Register at vote.gov, https, www.vote.gov. Learn the issues, vote for leaders who'll fight for you. But the system don't always play fair. When it fails, the bullet, your resistance, comes into play. Not always guns, but action, protests, art, organizing, building your own path, the artist painting truth, the poet weaving defiance, the student marching for change. That's the bullet today, but you gotta choose. Sitting still is surrender. Believing lies is bondage. Doubting yourself is defeat. Let me tell you about Aisha, a 21-year-old sister from Atlanta. She grew up hearing she was nothing. A black girl from the projects told her dream of being a doctor was foolish. The system said her vote didn't matter, her voice was irrelevant, her life expendable. She believed those lies, dropped out, worked dead-end jobs, buried her dreams under shame. But one day, Aisha walked into a community center drawn by a voter registration drive. An elder there, a woman who'd marched with Dr. King, who'd heard me speak in '64, gave her a book about the civil rights movement. It was a spark. Aisha read, learned her history, saw her power. She registered to vote, though she doubted it'd change anything. She enrolled in a GED program, though she feared failure. She wrote poetry, pouring pain and dreams onto the page, though her hands shook. Each step was a choice, to use her voice, to resist lies, to fight for freedom. Today, Aisha's in college, studying to be a nurse, organizing voter drives, mentoring kids like her. She ain't just fighting for herself, she's lighting a path for others. Now look at the world you're in. In 2025, the fight ain't over. Policies like Project 2025 threaten to roll back civil rights, environmental protections, and social justice, hitting black and marginalized communities hardest. Mental health is a crisis. The Surgeon General calls it a national emergency. Young folks, especially from minority and low-income communities, face anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts at alarming rates. Why? Underfunded schools, scarce mental health services, stigma. But you can demand more funding, more diverse providers, more understanding that seeking help is strength, not weakness. Climate change is another battle. It's not just environmental, it's justice. Marginalized communities suffer most from pollution, storms, heat waves, yet youth are leading the charge. Greta Thunberg, the Sunrise Movement, showing the world what's possible when you stand up. Join them. Use your voice, your vote, your action to demand a sustainable future. Economic inequality is a beast. The rich get richer while you